Hi, it's Joe Soto, and welcome back to another episode of The Journey with Joe, where we're going to talk with successful entrepreneurs and talk about their journey up the road, up the mountain, up the ladder of success, and all the trials and tribulations that go along with that. First, we're going to thank our sponsor, Coastal Insurance Group. Great guys will take care of all of your insurance needs and help you out if you have questions about insurance. Give them a shout. Today, I'm super excited. I have Miss Rachel Ramirez here with me, CEO extraordinaire, mom, badass, boss, and I'm just super grateful to have you here, spending some time with me, talking about life, business, family, entrepreneurship, and all the things in between. So Rachel, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, Joe, thank you. I so appreciate the invitation. And anytime I get an opportunity to spend time with a fellow entrepreneur, it's such a privilege. And so thank you for asking me. And I'm just excited to be here and excited to just be a part of what you're doing. It's awesome.
Yeah, I thought what was interesting when we spoke yesterday, you asked me, well, why are you doing this? Right. And for me, I never really thought about it, right? Like I was like, oh, yeah, I thought it's cool, but it really came down to giving back to other people, right? And I think that's a big part of what you do is giving, pouring into others and giving them stuff that I didn't get until much later in life, right? So by doing this and sitting down and telling your story, you know, your story is going to resonate with somebody out there who may be anywhere in the world, right? The power of media and this microphone that we can touch anybody anywhere is a beautiful thing, right? So so tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your business. What do you kind of do high level on what your business does?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. And you're absolutely right. I absolutely love giving back. And that's one of the things I love most about having my own business. And so I had the privilege of being asked to go to Washington, D.C. almost 25 years ago, which I can't even believe that much time has passed now.
It's really, seems like yesterday, right?
It really does.
It's like, oh, yesterday, 25 years ago.
Oh, my goodness. And I really liken it to, looking back at a mountain and just seeing how tall that mountain is and going, dang, I've really climbed up that mountain. That's amazing.
Right.
And now I feel like I'm coming down the other side of it. And so had anybody told me that I would have been where I'm at today, 25 years ago, I wouldn't have believed it. And so I had an opportunity to go to DC and work at the Department of Labor. And that's really where I started my company. And so what I do is I do federal government contracting. And I actually do a lot of other things on the side as well, because I'm a entrepreneur true and true. And so I've got a lot of other projects, but my core business, Performance Excellence Partners, is federal government contracting. Okay. And we've worked with all kinds of different agencies within the federal government out of the national office, and primarily in the Department of Labor, but also Department of Energy, Homeland Security, Health and Human Services. And so Department of Defense actually is a big one now for us. And so we provide project management, organizational development, human resources, all kinds of things. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you did tell me a little bit about wanting to become an entrepreneur, but let's go back, right? So you told me you were raised on a farm, single mom, raised on a farm. Tell me a little bit about hardworking mama. So that hard work was ingrained at a young age.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, definitely. So my mom, who's amazing, definitely, I call her a maverick because I feel like she's one of those people that is just very no nonsense, and her gift is hospitality and generosity, and so she had an opportunity when she was 22 years old to go work in Seattle with Boeing and put on airplane doors. And like any sheltered kid back in the day, she came home and she was pregnant with me.
Oh, wow.
And anyway, so she was a single mom for my first 8 years of my life. And I went back to the farm where I was raised by my grandparents, primarily, and our extended family. So my mom is one of 12. And I always say at that point in my life, I feel like I got the very best part of my grandparents because, they had raised their kids. I was the first grandchild. And so I didn't really know that we were poor until much later in life because I was so well loved. But gosh, on the farm, getting up 4 a.m. to do chores before I went to school, and just, work was just how we did it. And so, yeah, that's how I grew up. And I think that I still get up at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's one of my tips to success is, get it done before the day starts.
Start early, beat the sun up, the sun up, right? What you said was interesting, and you said it yesterday too, was you didn't know you were poor because you were so loved, well loved, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny, the last guy I talked to said the same thing, right? Like we struggled, but we didn't know we were struggling. You look back, there's a certain point in your life. And for me, I didn't realize the struggle until I had kids of my own, right? Like I didn't realize how hard my mom worked.
Yeah.
Right? My mom worked 2 jobs, single mom, worked 2 jobs my whole life, put me in Catholic school. I grew up in a really bad neighborhood in New York, and sacrificed all of that. And you don't realize that, right? Like when you're going through it, you're just going through it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you mentioned something to me about going to college or working on the farm, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So when I was 13 years old, my mom, and we were back home for the summer, my mom ended up actually marrying a migrant worker. And so my stepdad joined the military, and they quickly had 3 more kids. And so I have, so
it's the military way,
right?
They pay you more if you have more kids.
It's true. But I have to say, that's probably the reason why I didn't have my kids until much later in life, because I sort of helped out with those kids. Yeah. But so my mom, we went home for the summer while my dad was on deployment, and she said, okay, you're going to work. You want school clothes, you're going to work. And I was like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Well, you're going to work in the fields. And she said, and the reason that you are is because I want you to figure out if you want to work hard physically or you want to commit and go to college and make other choices in your life. And so for 3 months over the summer, I hoed weeds around apple orchard trees in the apple orchards. Yeah. And got up and I got blisters on my hands.
Yeah, I was going to say your hands.
Yeah. And I was 13 years old. And so, and I got to keep all the money that I earned. And I was furious every time I got woken up to go work in the fields around people who I didn't speak Spanish. You know, I was taught to assimilate. And so I still don't, embarrassingly, I still don't speak Spanish. But what that taught me during that summer was that I want to be able to make choices in my life. Yes. And I always want to earn enough in life to be able to make decisions about what I want to do, how much I want to do it, who I want in my life, how I want it. And so for me, working hard and working smart, paying my way through college, is really about being able to make choices.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely, there's power in having the decision, the choice to do what you want versus what you have to do.
Absolutely.
Right. It's like running the rat race. If you do the rich dad, poor dad, right? Like you're in that rat race. And some people are okay doing that. Right. There's some people who are wired to just punch the clock and they're cool with that. Right. They're like, hey, cool. I did my 9 to 5 and I'm done. And then there's other crazies like you and I,
right,
who are like, all right, well, the clock's done, but now I can do another clock and I can do something else. And maybe if I do this, and this, there's always something going on, right? So you go to college, you get your degree in something you told me, but it was way too fancy for me. I'm not that smart of a guy.
Yeah. So I got my degree in industrial organizational psychology. I got a master's degree.
Great. So you can tell me if I'm crazy.
Yeah. IO Psych. Gosh, what an amazing degree. I didn't know it. And honestly, to be perfectly honest, I took psychology because I thought it'd be fun and easy.
Yeah.
And I never thought I was college material. I was a BC student in high school. It wasn't until I got into college that I started to become an AB student. And then when I got into my master's program, I became an A student because I loved what I was doing. I loved the professors. I loved the content. And so if I had been going to college now, I probably wouldn't get in. So I just, what a great opportunity, right? And what amazing opportunities we have in California for affordable college and schools. And, so I graduated San Diego State and Long Beach State. I'm a community college state girl, know, and so paid my way through college. But so psychology, because it was easy. And then you really have 3 choices with psychology. You can do clinical, you can do You can do IO psych, you can do industrial psychology, or like school counseling or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I definitely don't want to be a counselor. And so I'll do this IO thing. And what an amazing degree. So really it's about studying people at work.
Yeah.
And and that I can fit into anything. And so most of my peers are HR directors of big firms.
Okay.
I'm one of the few entrepreneurs in the bunch.
Yeah.
But it equipped me well to do it, because it's really about understanding people, how to motivate them, how to lead a team. So it's
it's all about
degree.
the people, right? Any business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether it's, field, working in the field
Mm-hmm.
to, fast food to the Ritz-Carlton or the Four
Yep.
Seasons, right? Like
Yep.
it's all about the people.
It is all about the people.
And I think so many times in life, bosses think it's about
Mhm.
themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And it's 1,000% not, right?
Right.
Like I've
It's
learned
not.
the
Yeah.
hard way. Like it's
Mhm.
really about the people I surround myself with.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm only going to be as good as they are,
Absolutely.
right? So
Yep.
I can pour into them and make
Mhm.
them better,
Yep.
which ultimately leads to me being better, but
Mhm.
that fills my cup.
Yep.
Right? For some people, that doesn't fill their cup at all.
Yeah.
They're just like, no, me.
Right.
Right? So
Yeah.
so you finish school,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start getting into, you're telling me the story about how you started to form your company, how your company came about, which is funny because you tell me that story, right? And I literally thought for like 3 weeks about what am I going to call this podcast, right? And I'm writing down like 1,000 names,
Yeah.
and like I'm overthinking it. I'm a analyzer.
Right.
And then Joaquin comes to me. He's like, how about this? I'm like, perfect. That's it. The Journey with Joe, because I want to talk about people's journey,
I
right?
love that. That's awesome.
He's like, keep it simple. I'm like, oh man. So tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
I love that.
You
So
get an opportunity.
I get an opportunity. Somebody heard me speak at a conference in Coronado, and they were from DC, and they came up to me and they said, hey, Rachel, have you thought about spending any time in DC? And I said, why would I spend time in DC? I live in Southern California.
By the way, I hate DC. I think DC is like the armpit of the world, and I'm from Brooklyn.
Oh, well,
I
there
do
you
not
go.
I do not care for DC at all. But anyway.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a little bit more about that too in a minute,
Yeah.
because but anyway, he goes, well, why don't you go ahead and send me your resume? And I said, okay. So at that time I was working for the city of Long Beach in workforce development. And that's what I was doing my presentation on. And so I sent my resume in, and about 2-3 months later, I get a call from 3 people from Washington. One person said, I want you to work on this program called for Baldrige. It's Baldrige criteria. And basically it's how great companies conduct their business. And it's an assessment. And they wanted to put that assessment in all of the workforce development agencies within the Department of Labor, is to use that same criteria.
Okay.
The other 2 were older workers and displaced workers. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. Which one do I want to do? And they said, well, we want to share you. And this other guy who was offering me the Baldrige job said, yeah, I don't want to share you. It's me or nothing. I love that attitude, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to work with you, and I'm going to work on quality and continuous improvement.
Yeah.
And so I quit my job at the city, sold everything, and I showed up at the doorstep of 200 Constitution Avenue, Department of Labor in DC, right next to the Capitol. And I get escorted up, and he said, oh, you actually showed up.
What are you doing here?
Right. I didn't have an offer letter. I didn't have a contract. He said, yeah, I would love to do this. And I'm like, great. Okay. So I assumed that meant we had a deal I was there. And so anyway, it took about 6 months for them to figure out how to pay me. They had this consulting firm that was on contract there hire me. And then finally got paid. And then about a year later, he said, hey, Rachel, I would like you to manage all of these contracts. And I said, okay, I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
Why not? And so I go, well, I have no idea how to do that. And he said, well, go down to the contracting office. They'll help you figure it out. And I said, okay. So I walk into the contracting office, and they said, well, do you have a company? Do you have a DUNS number? Do you have a tax ID number? I go, I don't even know what you're talking. I don't have any of that stuff. Right. And so they go, well, you need all that in order to get a contract. And so I'm like, oh, dang, what am I going to do here? So I walking down Pennsylvania Avenue and just like a deer in headlights, like I have no idea how to make this happen. And I walk into a First Union Bank, and I'm not quite sure they exist anymore. But anyway, I walk into First Union Bank and I go up to the counter and I said, I need to open a business account. And they go, well, do you have a tax ID number? And I don't have any of that. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. You're like, no, but I'm in DC.
And they go, well, you need that. And I'm like, oh. And they go, why do you want this? And I go, well, I'm going to be getting a contract. And they said, okay, well, how much is your contract going to be? What are we talking about here? And I said, it's going to be $800,000 to start. And they said, oh, come here. And so I get escorted behind the wall.
Yeah.
And I go up these dark, brick stairs, because everything in DC is old brick, right?
Yep.
And I'm just thinking, I don't know, this doesn't feel right. And I pop out into this sunny, bright office, and there's a gentleman there. And he looks at me and he says, hey, doll, what do you need? I'm like, oh.
You're like, oh,
yeah,
boy.
Right? What am I doing? And he goes, sit down. And so within 2 hours, I had a tax ID number, a DUNS number, articles of incorporation. And when he said, okay, well, what do you want this company name to be? And I said, I have no idea. I have not even thought about this at all. And he goes, well, what are some things that you're working on? And I said, well, I'm working on a conference called The Journey to Performance Excellence. And he goes, well, why don't we call your company Performance Excellence Partners, PEP, PEP, because you seem peppy. And I said, great, perfect. And so literally it was about a 15-second discussion.
That's funny.
And I walked out of there, walked back into the contracting office before 4:30, because everybody leaves at 4:30 in DC.
Yep.
And I said, here you go. I have my tax ID number. And they're like, amazed that I got it in one afternoon. Wow. And that was the beginning of my company.
Did you realize, like, at the time, what a defining moment that was?
Had no idea.
Had you sat on that, or had you said, yeah, I don't know how to do that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Like, there was no internet back then, right? You weren't going to Uncle Google to figure it out. Right. Like, that was like a crossroads.
It really was.
It really, really was, right?
Yeah. And when I think about, and as I mentor businesses, and I think about how amazing that I was given a jump start, right, to start a business, to have a contract that was really a great foundation for, what was to become my business. It's such an incredible opportunity. And so I tend to be a yes person in the sense that, yes, I'll do it. And then, let me bring on the people to help me get it done.
Yeah.
Right.
What I think is interesting about that is it was a great opportunity, but you left here with nothing. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, that nothing. Took a lot of, you don't speak Spanish, that's cojones, right? I think that translates in any language. But that took some guts to pick up and move and say, oh, I'm going to this job. And then you find out you don't have a job.
Right.
Right? So, like, there was 6 months of chaos in your life where you're like, am I doing the right thing? Is this, like, what's going on? Like, am I supposed to be here? Do I go back to California? Right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. And, that doesn't stop. At every I think, ebb and flow of your business, you question it, right? And so that's definitely happened to me. I remember after the administration changed in Washington and it was time to come back to California, and we were having our first baby, I said, okay, well, I never meant to have a business, so I'm going to go ahead and go get a job. And so I got a job with a PR firm.
Yep.
And
this is great, by the way. Go ahead.
I got a job with a PR firm, and had my desk there, which was weird because, I was used to managing big contracts and being the boss of people at that point. And so I decided to stay home and work. It's a Wednesday morning, and I get a call from the vice president of the company, and he says, hey, Rachel, where are you? And I go, I'm going to work at home today. And he goes, well, you do know you need to tell somebody that, right? And I said, bad word. This is not going to work.
It's not going to work.
Defining moment.
Yeah.
It's like I knew right then that I was not I could never go back. It's like, I don't care how hard this is going to be to have a business, but it's what I have to do.
Yeah.
I can't go back to being an employee anymore.
Yep. I remember mine. I was working in a big call center, and I had a newborn baby. My daughter was maybe a year old, and one of the young managers came up to me and asked me a question, and I was like, dude, you asking me this question does not motivate me, right? My wife and kids is why I'm here working. Don't leave me alone, right? And it could have been I was sleep deprived, newborn, right? All that fun stuff. And then I remember looking down, and he went and, he was walking down the aisle asking everybody like how many people they talk to in a day or something like that. And he got to another guy who was an older guy, and I looked and I go, that's not going to be me, right? Like, if I don't get out of this, I'm just going to be 60 years old sitting in a cubicle. Yep. And there's no way God didn't put me on this planet to just do that. Right. Right. So that was like a defining moment where you're like, I am not working. If I want to work from home, I'm going to work. If I want to stay in my, I'm going to go do what I want to do.
I'm going to call my own shots.
I'm going to write my own ticket.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, so then you did, so then you went on your own, and then you were telling me a little bit about, you got an awesome husband.
Yeah. Awesome husband.
Awesome husband. How many kids you got again?
4.
Boys, girls?
Yeah. So I have 3 boys.
Yep.
I have Ethan. He's at the School of Mines doing engineering.
Ooh.
How we got an engineer in our family, I do not know.
Nice.
But he's engineering. I have Jameson. He's at Belmont doing commercial music.
Nice.
He's an amazing musician.
And does he play music, or?
He does, yes.
Nice. What does he play?
He plays the drums, the guitar, and the piano.
Wow. Do you play instruments?
I do not.
Does
and I can barely clap in church.
Really? Does your husband play any instruments?
Nobody appreciates music. And so, one of the things that
That's interesting.
Yeah, one of the things that I always prayed for was that my house would be filled with music. And so the kids got 5 years of classical piano, and we got 1 musician out of it, and that's Jameson.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so he loves it, super talented and amazing. And so my house was definitely filled with music.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have Cooper. Cooper's 14, and he's awesome. He has the sense of humor of just timely and perfect. And I always say my sense of humor must be that of a 13-year-old boy, because I just love spending time with him, laughing.
Isn't that funny?
He's so timely. But and then about 7 years ago, I went through, I was just maxed out in my business. Actually, about 10 years ago, I was super successful. I had just won Women Business of the Year, Department of Energy. We won a $20 million contract. I was traveling to DC constantly from California. We were growing and growing, and I was burnt out. I had these 3 kids. I was doing work really well, but I really didn't feel like I was juggling my family really well. And so at that time, I got a coach. I got an executive coach, and I just needed some help figuring it out.
Yeah.
Didn't want to get a counselor. I wanted to stay focused on the future and moving forward. And so we figured out what I really wanted to do, what was going to bring joy. And I always wanted a daughter. And so, but I was done having kids at that point. I had my kids later in life. And so I asked my husband, I said, really like to, it's on my heart to adopt a little girl. And he said, absolutely not. At that time, he was commuting an hour and a half back and forth to Rosemead. He worked at Edison.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, here's the deal, dude. I can do our family well, or I can do my company well, but I can't do both well anymore. This is getting really hard. And he goes, well, how about I join the company? And I said, do you want to stay married? I don't think I can
that would not work in my marriage.
That would not work, right? Well, I didn't think it could work in mine either. But the bottom line is, and we said, he's a great guy. And he said, here's the deal, Rachel. I am committed to loving everything about you. So how can you say no to that, right?
Oh, man, that's awesome.
And so he joined the company. And I said, now about adopting a little baby girl from China. And he said, absolutely not.
Again?
Absolutely not.
Man,
yeah.
But you're persistent.
Well, I just said, do you mind if I pray about it? And he's like, you can do whatever you want, girlfriend. This one's not happening. And so I said, okay. So I prayed for 3 years, and we went on a cruise to Mexico, our first cruise with the boys. And it was the last day of the cruise. And we had our nice dinner where the kids are in the kids camp or whatever. And I said, okay, I'm ready to move on to a new dream. And so if this isn't going to happen, that's okay. Because I wanted 100%.
Yeah.
You know, there's some decisions in your marriage and your life that you really need 100% so that they'll be blessed, so that you'll be doing it united. And so I said, I'm just going to ask you this one last time, and then I'm going to let it go. And I'm going to be dreaming about something else, praying about something else. And I said, you know, can we adopt a baby girl from China? And he looked at me and he said, yes. And I'm sorry it took so long.
Really?
That moment, I felt like I was pregnant all over again.
Wow.
And 2 years later, we got Ariana Joy Ramirez.
Wow.
And we all went to China and picked up our baby girl. And so she'll be 10 years old on Christmas this year. Yeah.
Oh, man.
I got my baby girl.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That is super, super cool. So definitely, wow.
So 4 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the way that I got her, I'm convinced, is getting that executive coach. And my goal with that coach was to create margin and space in my life to do the things that I absolutely wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that I was excited about doing. And so, you know, some of those things have been giving back to the community. I'm on several boards, you know, foundation board, the Huntington Beach Chamber board. I love mentoring other businesses. And so, but you got to have space in your life to do that, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because the time, you said it, and it's so true, but time is the most valuable asset that we have.
It is.
Right.
And we all have the same amount of it.
We all have the same amount of it.
We
but
do.
you have people like yourself who get more done in the same amount of time. Right. Yeah. And some of that is because you manage your time very well, but you also pick what you put your time and energy into, right? Yeah. And you're it sounds like you're very careful about where that time goes, right? Because if you say yes to one thing, you say no to something else.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And I was in the same boat, right? For years and years and years, I was business, and family was always like there, but I was so hyper focused on business, you know, and to a fault, I didn't give my wife and kids the best of me, right? They always got the rest of me. And that was like that was really bad for a long time. And it's something I'm constantly working on. And a coach for me changed my life, right? Like I started getting coached like 7 years ago.
Awesome.
Changed my life completely. I think anybody out there who doesn't have somebody that they seek counsel from is missing it, whether it's your pastor, whether it's a brother, sister, or somebody who's more successful than you, or just a different voice is priceless, right? And you mentioned that to me, like, hey, I got this coach, and that was it, right? Like that was the game changer. Yeah, you know.
I think there's 3 people in your life that are essential. And so for me, those 3 people are, and you mentioned one, you know, like a coach or somebody that you're getting counsel from that's kind of where you want to go, right? And then colleagues, peers, people that you can talk to that can relate to right where you're at right now. And then I think it's important to give back and to be mentoring somebody or to be teaching somebody. And so whether that's your kids or that's your staff or that's other people in your life, because, you know, one of my favorite leadership word is congruence. And what congruence means to me is, you know, how I do one thing is how I do everything. And so, you know, when we talk about making decisions about how to spend time, I equate my time with integrity. Yeah. And so, you know, making choices to not squander it, to spend it in a very strategic and intentional and valuable way. And I think when people start elevating their time to the way that you would consider honesty or loyalty, all of a sudden it takes on a really different feeling. And so before you just fill your life with busyness, you really want to start filling life with quality and meaning and intention. And so for me, thinking of it in that way is a game changer. But I keep those 3 areas in my life really strong. I have great peers and great colleagues and people that are just right where I'm at right now. And we can just commiserate together and talk. And, you know, in fact, I'm going to bake cookies tonight with my women's presidents organization. And we figured we have to do it in a structured way because none of us like baking cookies, but
oh, that's so funny.
So we're doing it together. But, you know, those are my colleagues, my peers, right? And then I still have a coach and mentors and people that I look to, and definitely coaching and mentoring others. So
Yeah.
to me, that's full circle.
I agree. I think you get to a point where you want to give it to others, right? Like, so you mentioned that, but not everybody has that desire, right? To like, hey, I need to give this and pour this into other people.
Yeah.
Whether it's in business or in life or relationships, right?
Yeah.
Like just being there for others, really, really, for me, fills my cup.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's the number one thing, and you can pay it forward, and you realize like you're making a difference in other people's lives.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I can't think of anything more important than giving back and giving to others. It, to me, it provides clarity to my own life. Gosh, it's just so easy to be so grateful, right? When you don't have to look very far to just be so grateful for your own life and to give that back. It's almost kind of, what's the point if you're not giving it back? And it keeps me sharp. It keeps me on my game. It's part of being a continuous learner. I constantly learn from other people. And, things have a way of coming back until you get it, right? And so if you don't put yourself out there and continue to fail and risk and challenge yourself, then, I frankly, I get bored.
Yeah. You're wired different, right? Like I'm the same way. You're like, yeah. And I do think gratitude plays a big role in it, right? Like I focus on the 3 G's, right? Gratitude, graciousness, and generosity.
I love that.
Right. So if you go into into our kitchen, you'll see on our fridge, I had everybody do 100 things they're grateful for.
Right? I love that.
So everybody's gratitude list is posted there.
Oh, that's great.
When you get to about 70, that thing gets pretty granular, right? You're like, I'm thankful for my pillow. I'm thankful for shoes. Like it gets pretty granular, right? But I think if you keep that forward, it's hard to be angry when you're grateful.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So I always look back at that and I'm like, if you keep that forward, everything else will work out.
Absolutely.
Right. So, so conflict, right? I like to talk about challenges. So in business, I used to always avoid conflict. My coach says conflict is good, right? Healthy conflict is good.
Right.
Bad conflict is bad. How do you handle when you have conflict within people, right? Like employees and stuff like that. How do you handle those types of issues when you do arise them and when that happens, or maybe something with your kids, right? Because they're at an age where they're at each other a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, and this might sound a little pie in the sky, but our family is extremely peaceful.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, those 3 boys, they have a lot of energy, of course, right? But my husband and I have always kept the bar really, really high. And so in our family, the S word is stupid. And, so we really keep the bar high. They don't get to say, words like that. Yeah. And obviously really building a strong community around them. And so I always say that, anybody can win an argument. There's a really easy way to win every argument or every discussion, and that is to be the most mature person, is to take responsibility for the conversation and what needs to happen in it. And so I hope that I'm always the most mature person, which means that I get an opportunity every single time there is a conflict to seek to understand that person, to figure out how to get to resolution so that it's a win-win for both. I always want people to walk away feeling like, not embarrassed, not, how can we do this in a respectful way? How can we say this in a respectful way? I get most upset with myself when I react emotionally. And I'm not saying that I'm not passionate or I don't react emotionally, but in a conflict, right? Yeah. It's a good time to be logical, to be thoughtful, to be considerate. And to me, winning is really being compassionate and giving that person a way out. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that I'm not tough and that I don't put my foot down. And there's been a few times where I haven't been able to do it, where, I can think of a situation actually quite recently where we had a partnership and I poured into this partnership and really didn't feel like we got back. Like I kind of gave away a lot and didn't get a lot in writing because I'm pretty true to my word and I expect everybody to operate like that. But it was definitely a lesson learned for me. And so it's kind of like you get into partnerships and you sort of plan for the worst. You hope for the best, but you kind of in writing plan for the worst, right? And so that was a lesson that I needed to learn. And my husband, who now is my vice president of the company.
So you kept him around.
I did. It's worked out. He was able to go in and take care of that for me. And because I literally wanted to kill somebody. And so I'm not perfect, right? And I knew when I needed to call it and step out of it. But I don't have a lot of conflict in my life at all.
That takes a lot though, too, because I'm a hot-headed Puerto Rican from New York, right? So I used to just react.
Yeah.
And now I literally have to like stop, right?
Yeah.
Count me down.
Right.
Say a little prayer. Lord, please help me just,
Right.
let me not be that guy that I was
Right.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then just kind of take it, and even just passing it on to him is a big step, right?
Absolutely.
Because that isn't how you probably were 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? You were just like, I'm going to do it. Me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think it is so important to be patient. That's one of the things that I've worked on. It's just letting a little time pass and rethinking things and being very thoughtful about how to move forward.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to get a couple of words from our sponsor. Coastal Insurance Group, here for all of your insurance needs, whether you're looking to insure your car, your auto, your dog, your jewelry. We're here to protect you, your assets, and your loved ones with all your insurance coverage. Give Tim a call at 562. Give Tim Jarvis a call at 562-883-3944. He'll take great care of you. Now back to the show. All right, so we're going to go on the other side of the spectrum. We're going to go from conflict to fun.
Okay.
Right? So when you're not being the boss and juggling all the kids and doing all of that fun stuff, what do you do just to relax for fun?
Yeah, I read constantly, and so I'm a big reader. I love to do that. That's probably the single best way that I relax.
Any book recommendations, recent reads?
Gosh, there's so many great book recommendations. And
I know you love a good leadership book.
I love the leadership books. I also love anything on appreciative inquiry. I think right now I'm really interested in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming.
Do you know Rene Rodriguez?
I do not.
He's really good with the neuro-linguistic. He's actually going to come out here.
Really?
See if I can get you out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love that.
Another defining moment in my life was with him.
Okay. Oh, that's
I'll
awesome.
make sure I get you the info.
Yeah. Just building my toolkit, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I mentioned that I hired that coach about 7 years ago about creating margin in my life. Well, she called me during COVID and said, "Hey, Rachel, what are you doing? Do you have any free time?"
Yeah.
And I always like, yes. Because I'm
the same way.
Yeah. And so she goes, "I need more mentors and coaches in my business because we're bursting at the seams during COVID. And would you like to be a mentor? Would you like to, come in?" And I said, "Well, sure. Tell me more about it." And so anyway, long story short, I had hired her way back when, and she recently, about 2 years now, hired me to be an entrepreneurial coach. And so I have about 14 businesses that I work with as their mentor and as their coach, all businesses over $1 million, all different types of businesses.
All over the country?
All over the country.
Wow.
And I absolutely love it. And so when you ask me what I do for fun, I love to travel. When I have time and somebody to clean up, I love to cook. Of course, I love every single minute with my kids, and I love going on dates with my husband and all that great stuff. But really what's fun for me is coaching. Yeah. Also, one of my challenges to myself this year is to get on a private sector board and actually get paid to be on a board. So I'm on a board of a lot of nonprofits.
Okay.
But I'd really like to work for a private sector company and just kind of see what that would be like and really be held accountable, in a different way. Yeah. And so that's one of my goals. So that for me is fun. Yeah. One of the things I put out there this last year is that I want to promise my husband in 3 to 5 years we'll transition the business. Okay. Either hand it over to the employees or we're going to sell it. Yeah. And so that's fun because I get to work on how do I build this to maximize it in 3 to 5 years. Yep. Right? Real estate. I do real estate for fun. I'm always looking at real estate and thinking about what I can do with that. And, it's just like, so whenever I make over a certain amount of money, I reinvest it in something. I either buy another business, and I have a few of them where I'm just a silent investor, but I get to play, right? And do these different things. And so.
And you learn, so when you say silent investor, because I do a little bit of that too, is it truly silent? Like, is it just, here's my cash and give me my money? Or are you're in it, like you're learning a little bit about how the business works?
Yeah, absolutely. So I look at the books every quarter, and then I also ask questions like, hey, what can we do? What do you guys need help with? How can I help? What would take you to the next level? What are you thinking about? I mean, I obviously want to be able to help. So it's not just about the money, of course, but I don't need I don't need to.
You don't want to be in the nitty gritty of everyday stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's not. Yeah. Not fun, sort of say. You want to focus on your highest and best use. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I own a few stores at the airport, Long Beach Airport, and also the John Wayne Airport, other retail stores. I'm partnered with Paradis Lagardère there, so that's one of my ventures that I do.
Nice.
Yeah, and so percentage of the retail stores that are there. And so I get to walk the stores and check that out. It's fun.
That's cool.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a captive audience at the airport. Everybody.
Right.
It's always full. There's always people.
It's amazing.
Except for the pandemic, they were empty.
Yeah.
But
this is another yes moment, right?
Yeah.
And so I got a call way back when, several years ago, and I was driving, and they were looking for a small business to partner with in order to bid on this contract in Orange County. Paradis was. And I said, well, is this a real opportunity, or you just need a name to put on a bid? And they said, no, it's a real opportunity. And so been in business with them for over 10 years because I said, yes, I'll help you guys out with this proposal.
Really?
Been amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's super cool.
Yeah. And they said, well, do you know anything about retail stores? And I said, I'm an excellent shopper.
I frequent them often.
Often. Right. So, it's like really being able to transfer your skills. Right?
Oh, man.
But, hiring, of course, I can do that. Training and, so it's all good stuff.
And those leadership skills translate into any industry, but you do learn and you have to be willing to learn and say, all right, I'm going to take some bumps and bruises, but it's cool. This is a great opportunity.
Yeah. And I think willing to fail. Gosh, I remember when I worked at the city of Long Beach, I was, 21, 22 years old, and I had printed a marketing pamphlet, and I had put the new city council that they had just been voted in rather than listing the old ones. And so it was a big mistake. And it was a $13,000 print job. And it basically had to get all thrown away, right?
Because you can't still promote the old ones.
Right. Yeah. And so I was devastated and I was so upset. And I walk into my office that I was sharing with a much more seasoned and amazing mentor of mine. And she goes, this is amazing. And I said, what are you talking about? I totally blew it. I'm probably going to get fired, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And she goes, who at this age gets to make a $13,000 mistake? And I was like, dang, I love that.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've carried that with me, and now I make $100,000 mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's like not the end of the world.
Nope.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
You can't be scared to fail. And I think a lot of business owners and people in general, especially right now, I feel like the economy is kind of all over the place, right? And I read and listen to a lot, but they talk about in these times of right? In times of uncertainty, people follow the certain.
Yeah.
Right? And I heard that and that really resonated with me because the people who are certain aren't scared to fail, aren't scared to make mistakes, right? Like nobody wins 100% of the time. Right?
Yeah.
Like I'm a big sports fan, right? And so you can go into the Hall of Fame if you fail 7 out of 10 times in baseball.
Wow.
Right? Like if you failed 7 out of 10 times, you might be bankrupt.
Right?
Like you can fail. You can make a couple of mistakes, but 70% of the time, you're gonna be like, oh, right, we got to fix something here. So,
but out of failure comes innovation, right?
100%.
Yeah. So
right, that's how you have growth. Otherwise, if you keep doing the same thing, there's no growth. I mean, you can look everywhere in life, right? All the different opportunities and things that have come from, inventions and stuff like that. Like my car self drives. I'm amazed. It just freaking self drives. It's wildness. So your fun stuff is work. You're a lot like me. Like What do you do for fun? I like businesses.
Yeah.
I like real estate. Talk to me about real estate, because I'm obviously in the loan business.
Yeah.
And this market's been a little bit wild, right? Rates are high and stuff like that. But you have rental properties or commercial, or kind of what kind of stuff do you do on the real estate side?
Yeah. So, obviously we have our primary residence, right?
Yeah.
And so when we moved to Huntington Beach, which I had no intention of moving to Huntington Beach, is we were driving around. We weren't going to buy. We were just going to look at neighborhoods. And, of course, it's the last house available in this lot, in this new build. And so they said, it's a really good deal. You guys should take this house. And we had, we didn't know where we were going to live. And so anyway, $10,000 later, we have a down payment on this house. And it's like, it'll be a miracle if we qualify, because I now have no income. Everything just ended, and we're kind of, anyway. And so, of course we qualify, we got the house, and then, and so that was really cool. And then, eventually I started growing, my business really started growing. And my husband came to me one day and said, here's the deal. When your employees know what I'm having for dinner before I do, it's time for you to move out of the house. Because I had, 3 or 4 people in my dining room, and really? I had UPS coming, the gardeners coming, the mail. And he's like, you need to get an office.
Oh, wow.
You have to get out of the house.
Everything was in the house.
Everything was in the house. My kids, the nanny. It was literally Grand Central Station. So you're a dad, you know the deal, right? Mom has the baby, your wife has the baby. You have to stay home for a few weeks and help out. So my husband went and slept at the Cabana Club because there was no place for him to sleep in the house.
Oh, my God.
So he's like, why am I off?
That's so funny.
Yeah. So that was really like, okay, I got to go get an office.
Yeah.
And so I never liked renting. And so I decided that I was going to buy another house to be my office. And so I ended up buying a duplex. And 3 days before I was going to close, the bank said, I'm sorry, we can't fund it. You're, because I was sole proprietor, whatever, right?
Yeah. Stupid banks.
And so stupid banks. So seriously, I was furious, furious. And so my realtor happened to know another broker who could do some creative stuff, who worked with some, other small businesses, et cetera. And that was really the beginning of, well, I don't have to do stuff the traditional way.
Yeah.
Right. I can don't have to take no for an answer. And there's other ways of doing things. And so anyway, I'm up to 10 properties now.
Nice.
Yeah. And all different kinds of properties. During COVID, we bought a house in Mexico that we Airbnb. We made $95,000 last year on that.
Nice.
Awesome. I love it. It's such a fun place to go. We have a house in Big Bear that we have through a rental agency as well. So we're making money on that.
Yeah.
That house that we had bought that was our single family, my girlfriends in the neighborhood said, we're going to go look at houses because we want to move in the next couple years. And it's like, oh, well, you're not going to leave me here. So I went and looked at a house, and 2 months later we had a new house. And so they were there for 2 more years, but we were gone in 2
You were gone in 2 months?
I don't mess around.
Yeah. Take action.
Yeah, take action. So that's our house that we're in now. And my husband's like, we're not moving. We don't need to move. This house is just fine. And I took him to the backyard of this other house, and he's like, can we buy it? I go, absolutely. Let's try. We can try. And so got another house there. And so, yeah, it's just kind of been a series of different things. I've partnered with people who are in the inside track of opportunities, who are getting properties out of trusts, who mostly need cash, which I have. What I don't have is where to find these properties, but I know people that know that, and then they need cash. And so sometimes we go into partnership together. I usually handle the funding side because of my good credit and cash. And then they do the rest of the stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's how it's worked. And so, been great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I probably now have more invested in properties than I actually do in my business.
Wow. Really cool. Yeah. And real estate, I think, is one of those things over time, it doesn't lose, right? I think right now in the market that we're in, everybody's trying to time the market.
Right.
Right. Interest rates up.
Yeah.
Values are going to drop.
Yeah.
This, and this. And I'm like, buy a house because you need it.
Right.
You need a place to live.
Right.
You need a place to invest.
Yeah.
Right. What's going to give you a better ROI
right.
than that house?
Right. Yeah.
Nothing.
Right. And if you have cash, right, there's places you can put your cash, like what are bonds at 4.5 guaranteed.
Yeah.
So that makes a 6 or 7% interest rate not so bad, right? You're like balancing it out. So if you have cash, right? We knew that in the recession, cash was sort of going to be king, right? And so there's a lot of ways to like balance it out. I absolutely would purchase real estate right now because, one, it's coming down, and the interest rate, who knows how long that's going to be. But as long as you can make the math work, it's still a very good option.
Yeah, it's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game. And so, like I said, I have kids in, Golden, Colorado, one in Nashville, and we're looking at buying houses for them because why not?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you said something interesting. You said that you can handle the financing or capital, right? But you have people who can help you find the properties.
Yeah.
And one of the things you mentioned was delegation, right?
Yep.
And I'm a control freak. It took me forever to figure out how to delegate.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm control. Nobody can do it as good as Joe. But one of the things you told me was like, I can say yes to an idea, or I can come up to the, I can have an idea, and then I can find people to help me execute it. Tell me about that, about delegation. How'd you get good at it? Because I suck. I was like so bad. It was like hungry hippo, right? I wanted to do every single thing. And nobody can do it as good as me.
Yeah.
So tell me about delegation, because delegation is probably one of the most powerful words in the world.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to be a good business owner, leader.
Yeah. I think it's one of my superpowers, to be honest. I'm a natural delegator. I delegate everything I don't like to do. And that comes back to making choices. If I don't want to do it, somebody else can do it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we get stuck in our excellence, to be honest. We're super good, right? You do those things because you can, and you're really good at them, right? And so, but those things, somebody else, it's probably their zone of genius or it's their brilliance, right? Where it might just be your average or you're okay. Yeah. And so really to create the best product, to create the best team, it's letting people operate where they do best and what brings them joy, what fills their cup. Yeah. And so if I'm not operating in my zone of genius, then it's taking away from me. It's not adding to me. And so I want to operate in the areas where I'm gifted, where I love the work, where it comes natural to me, where it's fun, and I want to let other people to do. And I surround myself with people that love to do those other things and help fill in my gaps. But if I'm doing everything, then I'm really taking an opportunity away from somebody else, right? Yeah. And so I'm not really able to grow the team if I'm doing their job for them or if they're doing somebody else's job, right? Yep. And so really it's about having the right people in the right seats. Of course, they have to understand the work. They've got to be passionate about your core values and be consistent. You know, it's hard to work with somebody that doesn't share your values. That's a biggie. And they have to have the aptitude to do it. And then the rest is up to me. If they have the aptitude, that they have the ability to do it, they're gifted in that way, they share my core values, then it's my job to give them the resources, the training, the time, the energy to get them in their best they can be in that space. Yeah. And so it's not to do their job for them. And I have other things to do. Yeah. Right? So
tell me about the core values. So two questions. One, the core values. Two, for new business owners out there, how do you find those people to meet? Like, what's that hiring process? Like for me, I was slow to hire. I was quick to hire, slow to fire, right? I realize that's the wrong way to do it. Right? Joe, you're doing it the wrong way.
It's one of the hardest things.
Right. So now I have everybody else interview before Joe interviews.
Oh, that's great.
Right. So that was my way. So just, what is your process? If you have a process, disc test or whatever, and then just tell me real quick what the core values are.
Yeah. It's so funny that you say that because the team took that off my plate as well. Because I'm like, I like you, you're hired. They're like, no, wait, we got to make sure they have the right skills.
Yeah, I can. What do you mean? You need to dig ditches, but you're a ballerina? I can teach you how to dig, ballerina.
Right. Yes. Yeah, for me, it was just if I like somebody, they were hired, right? But I think...
Bad formula. Everybody out there, bad formula.
Yeah, that's big picture people, right? Like that's how we think. And so, my team has them go through a very detailed process of interviewing, obviously for skill, and then I do get to make the final decision. But ultimately, and really only if it's our core team in terms of project managers, like all the people that are out there, I don't even get involved in that.
Yeah.
But we have a process that we go through, and this might be simplify, but yucky people, right? And right away, right? And so sometimes you do make a bad hire. That happens, and absolutely got to get rid of them quickly, right? Hopefully we're hiring people that share core values and they're trainable and they have a great attitude and they want to learn. Those toxic people, shame on us as business owners. If we keep them around, they need to go. And usually, or it can be that those are really even sometimes our highest performers. But if they're toxic to the company, they need to go. If they don't share the core values, they need to go, because there's enough people out there, right, to get those skills in, those high performers. But you can't have people that are toxic, really dangerous to a company and got to get rid of them.
To everything.
Yeah. And then there's those people that high performance, high core values, right?
Yeah.
And those are the people that sometimes when we're doing everything else, if we're not delegating, if we're not if we're not prioritizing our work as leaders and as owners of the company, we forget about them. Yeah. And they need our time. That's our top 20%, right? And that's where we really want to be investing our time, because they're loyal. They're, they've got everything going. They're really carrying the company. So that's why I focus my time on my top 20%. My leadership team, I have a team of people around me. They're my leadership team. Yeah. Meet with them on a regular basis. I can find out anything about our company just meeting with those few people.
Yeah.
And then their job is to really empower those people.
Everybody else. Yeah. And then core values, what are those?
Yeah. So
I read integrity a lot.
Yeah.
In the little bit of recon I can do on you. Right. Because you're non-existent in the internet, which is amazing. Private eye, if they ever come to get you, they will not find you. But I did read integrity a lot, right? It was something on your website that I saw a lot. So tell me a little bit about the core values as far as like company or person.
Yeah, it was really hard for me to come up with our core values, because I wanted them to be consistent with my personal values as well. And so I think that we've done a really great job with that. And so we have core values like uncommon integrity. And what that means, integrity in and of itself stands alone, right? But for me, uncommon integrity, because I wanted to bring God into it, and not everybody has that spiritual foundation. And so for me, that was what was going to be the uncommon part. Okay. And everybody might not know that. They might just see uncommon integrity. Well, that sounds like a double positive or something, whatever. Yeah. But for me, that's what it meant. I needed it to be different than just straight out business integrity. Yeah. Right? Enduring partnerships. Those partnerships that are going to go deep and last long. Yeah. That we have things in common where we can be mutually beneficial to each other and lift each other up. And so, innovative solutions. Right. And so, being creative and having solutions and really, thinking about how we're going to solve problems. And so our core values were really based on, I can take our core values and do just about any talk because they ring true to my life. Yeah.
That's so true, because I think having that and hiring to that, right. It changes everything. Yeah. Right? Like you're very clear on what you want, and that person has to check those boxes. Right. And if they don't, it's pretty easy. You're a no.
Yeah. It's really, really easy. Right? And, there's so many great people out there that just haven't been led well. And so they really want to do a great job. They want to live up to a higher standard, but they aren't called to. They haven't been called out to do that. And so I see that happening in relationships. I see that happening at work. And so I think as business owners, if we hold people to that higher standard, we will be pleasantly surprised. Yeah. People want that. It feels good.
Yeah. And I think, and the same goes with you. I know you do a lot of volunteer work, right? I personally don't volunteer as much as I should, right? Just being fully transparent. But I think people really want to, if they're given the opportunity, right? Like if we set it up, if you lead people towards that, that you'll be surprised how many people will gravitate and be like, yeah, can I come volunteer? Can I help my time? And And I think we just live in a world where people are more selfish than selfless, right?
Yeah.
I can tell, like, you give your time, you want to give back, you want to help others. You realize that there's people out there who need more, right? And it's not always just things, right? I think so often we think of it as just stuff, right? Like, let me donate, whatever things. And it's not things.
Right.
And it's not always charity.
Yeah.
It's people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I always say that real estate loans is a relationship business. But the more I go through life, like, life's about relationships.
It is. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about who you surround yourself with.
Right.
Who God puts in your path.
Yep.
Right. And different people's paths are crossed at different times. And I feel like everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
God has a plan and is like, this is the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
So it's interesting that you have those values and you're aligning yourself with those types of people.
Yeah.
Because they're going to continue to bring you up.
Right.
Right. And continue to make you better.
Absolutely. And I think you are too. And so when you say that you should volunteer more, I think you are. The best kind of volunteering is the kind that is a win-win for what you're doing in your business and what you're doing in your life. And by doing this podcast, by doing everything that you do for the people in your company, that is an absolute gift. And so I wouldn't shortchange yourself on that.
I'm my toughest critic. You're not? I live in this place of like, Joe can do better all the time, but I'm blessed and I'm super grateful for, for all the blessings in my life. I really, really, truly am. So we talked a little bit about family and business, right? I love that your fun stuff is all business stuff. Like, that's the greatest. It reminds me, I have a friend, Al, who's the same way, right? He's like, so I'm doing this joint venture and I bought into this and then I'm doing that. And I'm like, well, where's the fun? He's like, well, that's fun. That's not fun for you. And so I think for other people who might be listening to this, like, you're not alone. There's other people like that in this world.
So true.
The only problem is most people, and I grew up in a Spanish family who tell you, don't do that. Everything was bad growing up. Was it like that for you too? Like, don't take this risk and don't do that. And if you buy a house, that's expensive.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, everything had this negative connotation to it.
Right.
And no risk, no reward. Right? So you have to do it and you have to get out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because if not, you just keep doing the same old.
Yeah,
right?
It's true.
It's a rat race.
Yeah. And I mean, it takes a special person, I think, right? You have to be wired to be comfortable with risk. I know my mom always starts the conversation out with, oh, so did it work out? And I'm like, don't even ask me that. Like, come on. Like, just assume that it did. And if it didn't, then, but she doesn't want to be disappointed, She doesn't want to, and so that's maybe a generational thing and a protection thing. But I've always just sort of rebelled against that way of thinking. And it's funny because when I went to get my master's degree, she's like, well, isn't that enough school? Like, shouldn't you just go get a job? And I'm like, didn't listen to any of it, And so I'm so thankful that I didn't, because it just wouldn't have worked out well for me. Here's the thing. I mean, God had much greater plans for my life than even myself or anybody in my life. And so when I became somebody that could just listen to that, and for whatever reason, being well loved, being surrounded by mentors and people that cared about me, making, good decisions. I mean, God, if I had married the first guy that I dated, or even the second or third, I wouldn't be as happy as I am now.
You would have fired them for sure.
I would have fired them. Right? Because you grow, I don't know, but you think I should marry somebody who's super successful. I dated a lot of those guys, right? And then I meet this guy who, by the way, is Mexican. And I said I'd never date a Mexican because I grew up with a very machismo stepdad. And so so my mom said, you're dating who? Jaime Ramirez? What? And I said, yep, I am. And so, but gosh, what a great guy for me, right? Like, he didn't, he's happy to have me shine. And, and so if I had been, second to anybody, what I thought I wanted to marry, right? So God knows what's what's best for us. And listening to that and allowing that to happen has probably been one of the biggest things in my life, is just letting the good stuff happen.
And having somebody who encourages you and pushes you to go forward, right? And gives you that support through, you know, making challenging decisions to making easy decisions, but having that person that even if you fall flat on your face, doesn't matter. Like Jaime doesn't care. Right. Like he doesn't care at all. So there's a lot, I think you mentioned that too. There's a lot about having that support. They say behind every great man, right, is a great woman, right? Is that what you told me? Yeah, but Jaime is the great man behind this great woman, right? So
I think behind every great person, there's great people.
Yes.
Right?
100%. And it's not just the spouse, it's the great kids, it's the leadership team, it's the employees, it's everybody, because there's no one person who can do it on their own, right? Like if you even take the game of golf. And Tiger Woods was a great golfer, right? But he had coaches. He was practicing. He had people who helped build him up, right? Like there's just a lot that goes into it. And I think so often you just see that person. And you're like, oh, Tiger, he's great, right? But there's all of those other pieces. So in every aspect of life. So before we wrap up, little bit of advice that you'd give to maybe a young entrepreneur, somebody who's starting out, because I look at it and I'm like, you really bet on yourself, right? Like you totally did. You knew, I don't want to work in a field. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to handle this. I'm going to pay for school. I'm going to go get a job. And I got this job and I'm going to go to, like, you took control. So the new business owner out there, or somebody who wants to get started, you know, any advice that you would give to somebody who's young and hungry?
Yeah, I would say make the commitment to be a lifelong learner, right? Because I think if you're a lifelong learner and you're constantly learning, whether it's about accounting or it's about getting an attorney or it's about getting, you know, your team, right? And so as a successful business owner, you have this team around you that's going to take care of things for you. And at some point, you're not going to be doing your business out of a shoebox. You've got to grow up. You've got to pay your taxes so that you can, like, take the next level, right? And a lot of small business owners, they might try and take shortcuts on things. But the opportunity that's there when you lay the foundation, when you hire the right people on your team that share your core values, when you let people go that don't fit, you make those decisions quicker, like really being a lifelong learner about how to do business well. And one thing that I wish that I had started doing 10 years ago or 5 years ago is getting ready to sell my business. Because when you start prepping to sell your business, it puts you in a different mental state about how you operate with your cash flow, the decisions you make, the people that you hire, because you obviously want to hit it out of the park when you go to sell, right? And so I think if we can put that thinking cap on early in the business, like, how would I sell this? How would I make this desirable? Well, one thing you wouldn't do is you would be able to be replaceable. And a lot of business owners are not replaceable because they don't delegate, or they don't do, you know, they are still doing everything, or they have, you know, or they have their kids doing everything, and they haven't really, like, built their team solid where somebody could see, I could run that business if that person goes away. Right. And so there's just so many, like, lessons out there. But I think being a lifelong learner and committing to that is absolutely crucial. Because there's not anything you can't do. Right.
And I think there's so many different challenges along the route, right? Along the climb. There's just always something. Whether it's the market or the family or
everything,
partners, right? Like there's just so many, and you constantly have to adapt. Right.
And it's not happening to you. It's just happening. That is the life of an entrepreneur. Right. It's not you I mean, I get it. It's you that it's happening to, and it feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders, but we all go through it. And that's why it's so important to have colleagues to be able to talk about this. Because when I go meet with my women presidents and they talk about a disgruntled person, or they're getting sued, or, you know, I mean, there's like, it's like, oh, I'm not alone in this, or I'm having trouble finding qualified employees right now, or, whatever the it might be,
Yeah.
right? Or getting funding, cash flow is an issue. Gosh, I have immediate colleagues, right?
Yeah.
That I can commiserate with. I'm not alone.
Nope.
And when you're in that kind of group, you don't even have to say anything. You can just listen and you feel understood and loved on, right? So it's really important to have those people in your life, not to do it alone. It doesn't have to be a lonely journey.
No.
Doesn't have to be.
No, not at all. Super, super cool. I know coaching has, like I said, it's changed my life. I've always had people that I can lean on, and growing up, single mom, big Puerto Rican family, like nobody talked about money. And so when I finally got coaching and coaches, and I had those people, right? Like my women presidents, right? Like to have that group is priceless, right? Like it doesn't matter what coaching costs. It's having that unity, that community.
Right.
You can't put a price tag on it.
It's so true.
Right. And the lessons that you learn there are more valuable than almost anything in the world.
Absolutely. Yep.
So
I love that.
Well, good stuff. I am super grateful for you and spending some time with me today.
Thank you.
And I just learned so much, and just so many good nuggets, and obviously passing this on to other people and sharing the love, sharing the love and sharing the knowledge. And I'm grateful for you spending some time with me.
Thanks, Joe. Great to be here.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate everybody out there listening. Thank you so much, and have a great day.